Are you looking to get on podcast shows? Are you unsure of how to approach a host, how to book a show, how to give a great interview, and then what to do after the fact? Hi, this is Kathleen Gage with Podcast Rockstar Club Facebook Live. And today I'm interviewing Kate Kunkel, who is a dementia specialist. She's written books. She has a retreat center in Ecuador, and she has used podcast interviews to enhance her visibility. She joined the podcast Rockstar Club a few months ago, and since that time, she's been rocking it. Today, we're going to talk about what she's done, what her recommendations are, her top tips on how to find shows, how to get on shows, and how to really rock the interview. So join in, and you're in for a great treat. This is Kathleen Gage with Podcast Rockstar Club. Now be sure, if you're watching this on YouTube, that you go ahead and you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification. If you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and subscribe. If you're on Spotify, go ahead and subscribe. Anywhere you're hearing this, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review, and enjoy the show. And I just want people to know what a great opportunity this is for you as members of the Podcast Rockstar Club to get visibility, because we start with the group. The group gets the first experience of seeing how much I can mess up on this. And then from there, you actually get your message out to market. So if you're not taking advantage of going through the program, getting on podcast shows, and then getting on the live, you're really missing the mark. Because Kate, you jumped on it right away. You and I, we had met through an international women's vegan group. That's how we initially met. You decided to join the Podcast Rockstar Club. You hit the ground running. You dug into the material, and you got quite a few interviews. So with that, I'd love you to give the group a little bit of your background. What made you decide to join the Podcast Rockstar Club, what you've learned from it, and how it's benefiting your message?
Sure. So I am a dementia prevention specialist. I'm an author of a book called Don't Let the Memories Fade. And the whole reason I decided to join Podcast Rockstar is because I want to get the message out that nobody has to suffer from dementia. It is mostly a preventable disease. So everything that I do is geared toward helping people understand the steps they can take to prevent dementia and enjoy a healthier life now, lose weight, have more energy, have more vitality. It's all together. We are holistic creatures. Everything that we eat, everything that we do or don't, every meeting that we have, every stress reduction technique we use, all of that goes toward our brain health. So I'm out here trying to get that across, and Podcast Rockstar seemed like a really good way to do that because, you know, I have a background in television. I was on television for 9 years on a broadcast program. So I was really comfortable with this kind of environment. So it made perfect sense for me to try and get my message out this way.
Excellent. And you specialize in minimizing one's risk with dementia, and you had shared some of the strategies. And before we get into the whole topic of podcast interviews, I'd love for you to give some information to people on how simple it is to actually minimize their risk with dementia.
Starts with stopping the standard American diet. I call it the standard Alzheimer's diet because it truly is sugar, junk food, processed food, stuff that's been sitting around in some restaurant's freezer for 6 months, and then they pop it in something to microwave when you get served. All of those things from a food point of view. So it's whole foods, plant-based, that Kathleen and I are all about. So that's a big part, is your diet. But you also have to move. If you don't move, you have a very big chance of developing dementia. You cannot be a couch potato. You need about 150 minutes, that's 150 minutes of aerobic exercise a week. And that can be dancing, that can be running, walking, swimming. I love swimming, that's my big deal. You also want to manage stress effectively. And women are twice as likely after the age of 65 to develop dementia as men.
That's incredible.
Scary.
Well, you know, when I break it down 150 minutes a week, that's a little over 20 minutes a day. It's like you can walk to the corner and back in 20 minutes, and there's your exercise. And already this morning, I've done 45 minutes of yoga. I've done, I started a new thing about clearing my chakras, but also the patting of the, you go through and you pat yourself all over. It's pretty, and it's an Asian woman who does it. And I love her energy. And later today, I'm going to go on a run. So I love the fact that you're promoting a plant-based vegan diet, and it's really about a healthy diet. Yeah. So with that, you have a very important message to get out to market, and you joined the podcast Rockstar Club. What did you find most helpful about joining the Rockstar Podcast Club?
I think for me, it was the structure, because I have a lot of things. I own a retreat center here in Ecuador. So I have a lot of stuff going on. And even through COVID, we have a guest here. We have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of maintenance. So there's always a lot going on in my life. And I've been doing a lot of other work trying to help feed people here who have been severely affected by what's been going on the planet. So I have a lot of stuff all over the place all the time. And I have a sick dad, so 5,000 kilometers away. So I needed structure, because I needed to get this book and this message out there. Don't Let the Memories Fade was not going to sit on a shelf in my office here. It's got to be out there. So I needed the structure to keep my brain and my hands and my thoughts on this. So, even just going through the lessons, I might not have been able to do as much as I wanted every day because I was out delivering food, but I was still able to follow the instructions. And then when I had time, I would go and I would, contact people, and just because you gave a few links to kind of pot it and things like that.
Right.
So I would go on there, and I got a few interviews from that. So it was just the structure, I think, that was really important for me, but also, the tips about pot it and some other sources that I just didn't know about before, because it wasn't my bailiwick.
Okay. And there's more coming. I just want to tell people with the podcast Rockstar Club, there is definitely more coming. And Pot It really has been a great resource for a lot of people. I've talked to several people who are in the podcast Rockstar Club who have used Pot It. They've used, they've used Apple Podcasts, obviously. There's new ones coming out all the time. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through and have a thread where people list which one they're using. Because the reality is I think it's about helping each other to really thrive within the environment of podcast opportunities. And with you joining the club and digging into the material, how many shows have you gotten since you became a member?
Ballpark. I have 24 shows.
Wow.
16 have already been aired. There are 3 in the can, and I have 5 or 6 lined up up until January. So, and a couple of them were people that I found through Potted. One was a gentleman that I've been interviewed with this will be the 4th time.
Who is that?
So he's in Toronto. I'll think of his name in a minute.
Not a problem.
Yeah. Anyway, because I initially was on his show when I lived in Canada, and I was doing harp work. So I was on his show about that, and I've been on it a couple of times about healing music, and because I incorporate music into my message about brain health. So yeah, it's been really interesting how many strange places come up, and I'm just out there more. So I've got a full page on my website, a media page where I share all of the broadcasts. And I think that's really important for people to do, because firstly, a lot of the hosts are starting out too. So it helps them, it helps you. It's that big circle, like you talked about, helping each other. And I think that that's a really important thing to do as part of this, to make sure you do your work to help get this out.
Well, let's take a step back here on the things that have been really beneficial for you to do. One is your media page. And for those who are new to the program or who haven't gotten to that module yet, that's social proof to the host. Because as a host myself, I'm looking for guests who I have 2 shows. One is Power Up for Profits. The other is Plant-Based Eating for Health. My Plant-Based Eating for Health show, they absolutely must be vegan, plant-based. It's like, that's just the law of the land. And if they're not, I'm not going to have them on the show. And yet that's not all that I look for. I look for somebody who can have an engaging conversation. I look for somebody who has an interesting story, like your story is fascinating. And so there's more to it than just the fact that they fit the criteria. And so if I can go to their website and I can see, oh, they've been on 10 shows, 20 shows, 30 shows, that tells me that they have the skill to be on a podcast show. So that's one reason you want to have a media page, and you want to put the links to shows that you've been on. Don't let that lapse, because I'll tell you, as somebody who's on shows all the time, last week, I think between my own shows of interviewing people and being on shows, I think it was about 8 times. And that starts piling up. It's like you say, okay, I'll get around to it. Well, as soon as you get that link from a host, either send it to your virtual assistant, your tech assistant, or yourself if you do your own website, and get it linked up right away. It'll save you a lot of time and frustration. So besides a media page, besides putting the links to past shows, what are some other tips that you can give to people who are just starting out with this journey of getting podcast interviews?
Really hone your message. Don't be all over the place. So like mine is, all I'm here to do on this planet right now, as far as this is concerned, I am here to help people get healthier so that they don't lose their memories. That's my message. That's my mission in life. And I think it's really important for people to see that that is who you are. That is what you're trying to get across, because it's really hard. And I had a talk show, a television talk show, and I know how hard it was for me when my guests would say to me, well, I can talk about this or this or this. You know, I don't want to have to make that decision. That's your decision.
Right.
If it fits with my criteria, that's great. If it doesn't, then I'm, okay, it's not a go.
Excellent. So hone your message. What would be something else?
Also, to be as professional as you possibly can. Even, it's really interesting because I was offered to do a show with someone, and the host, it looked like she hadn't even really brushed her hair.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
She was, and I said, I don't really think that this is going to work for us, and that was the pre-interview, and that's also something you have to be willing to do, because some people need to do that. But I thought, even for a pre-interview, that doesn't give you very much respect. It's not respecting me, and to me, I want to respect the host. I want to look professional. I want to sound professional. I don't want to have dogs barking in the background. Sometimes it happens.
Sometimes it happens. If it's a pet show, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. But the point is, you want to have that ultimate professional cap on all the time.
Absolutely. And you just brought a couple of great points up, and I encourage people that are listening right now. We have a few people that are tuned in. Put your questions in the thread. Go ahead and ask whatever question of Kate or myself that you have. Take full advantage of this. But you brought up a couple of important things. One is the pre-interview. If I don't know who somebody is, if they've been referred by somebody else, I will have a pre-interview, because I want to make sure, first of all, that they are 100% plant-based for my plant-based show. Had a call the other day with a gentleman that it's all over the place that's what the show is about. He gets on the line with me, and I said, before we begin, I said, number one question, are you 100% plant-based? He goes, well, no, I'm not. And I said, well, then we don't need to continue this conversation. And he got upset with me. He said, well, I wish you would have told me. And I said, well, actually, it's all over the place, and you got some messages that did say that. And I personally, as a host, for him to say that to me, it's like, okay, you just blacklisted yourself, like, big time. Because hosts are people. We are busy people. We have a lot to do. One episode, for a half-hour episode, can take as much as 3, 4, 5 hours by the time it actually airs, and then all the marketing that goes into it. So don't assume that your information is just the cat's meow and we're going to bend our rules to have you on the show, because it doesn't happen that way. I had another person who sold literally 600,000 books. I mean, this person was a rock star. They weren't 100% plant-based. And I said, I can't have you on the show. They were offended. And it's like, do your homework. So that's one thing. Have that pre-interview as a guest. And for those of you who are thinking of starting your own show, I'm going to start a program on that to really help you hone in how you get a show off the ground. Now, have you said no more than once? You said with this one woman, you said, I don't think this is a fit. And that's a great way to say it. I don't think that I'm aligned with your message. How many times have you turned something down?
Only twice. Only twice. Yeah. And I could tell that one was not going to stay on my message. Now I did do one podcast. I was trying to help a young man who's just starting out, and he talks with people all over the world. And because I'm from Ecuador, he was just, that's his podcast. He's just talking with people around the world. So that is completely off my message, but it was to help him out. So that was cool. Right. And we had a lot of fun. And I'm a great fan of his. I watch his stuff all the time. The other one was just I just couldn't go there.
I get it. You got. And
I just remembered.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just remembered my X-Zone guy, Rob McConnell. I could remember his show, but I couldn't remember his name. Rob McConnell. He's out of Canada.
Okay.
And he has an actual radio program, and it also goes on podcasting.
Okay, so excellent. And I always advise people, go with your gut, but be really careful that it's truly your intuition that's saying, no, this isn't a fit, rather than fear, because fear will tell you the same thing. So, and Debbie Stout has a question. Is this always called a pre-interview? Do all hosts do this? It's not always called a pre-interview. It might be, hey, let's just hop on the phone and have a conversation. It can be called anything they want to call it. It's not, I think the point I want to get across to people is what you said about being professional, but don't be so rigid that you think this is all corporate, because we all have our own rules, our own way of playing in the game of podcasting. And do all hosts do this? No, they don't all do this. Some just jump right into the interview. If I know the person, if I'm the one who reached out to the guest, I did one just the other day that this gentleman, he and his wife do a whole plant-based thing. It's Happy Healthy Vegan is the name of their branding. And I've been a fan of his for quite some time, and I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'd love to have you on the show. And I said, we don't need to do a pre-interview. Let's just jump right into the interview. And it was phenomenal because I knew that he had the skill. He has 250,000 followers on YouTube. He's been doing this for a long time. So Debbie, in answer to your question, it's an individual situation. And if the host says they want a pre-interview, you got to do it. I mean, and if you say, well, I don't do pre-interviews, then you're not going to be on their show. So what would you like to add to that, Kate?
Yeah. And I think it's, even for the pre-interview, you still want to have that, because that's your first image to the host. Mm-hmm. So even though you might not be on camera and you're not, this isn't going to be kept forever, you still want to have, your hair combed and, just be
good
professional.
Idea. Good idea. And Margot asked the question, and I'm not quite sure I understand this completely. So I'm going to answer in the way that I understand it. And if I'm off the base, Margot, send more. If you said yes to doing an interview and later vetting and gut says no, how do you go back with integrity? If you've done the interview and they've aired it, there's not a lot you can do about it. It's a done deal. If, on the other hand, you've done the pre-interview and you've scheduled the interview and you're just getting this just strange feeling that it's not going to fly, I would go back to the host and say, I've been giving it some thought and I just don't think that I'm a fit for your show. And something as simple as that can work. Some hosts may get upset. Other hosts will say, I was thinking the same thing. I actually had that happen once where I said no to a host and they said, I was thinking the same thing. And something just wasn't gelling between the two of us. So Margot, if I answered that sufficiently, let me know. If not, dig deeper into the question. So, what have you found to be, besides Podit, your best strategy for finding shows? What are, let's say, 2, 3, 4 ways that you find shows?
Well, I do go on and watch or listen to other podcasts, and I, go around Spotify and I kind of dig around there. But because I'm involved in other groups, like vegan groups, and I also belong to dementia prevention groups and dementia caregivers groups, that sort of thing, and a lot of alternative health sites. So I kind of keep an eye on what's happening there, because I, as somebody who's trying to get out the idea that I know what I'm talking about and I'm offering good information, I kind of just hang out in groups and offer, little tidbits here and there. Right. Sometimes it's taken well, sometimes not. But those places, I often find people referring to a podcast or a show or something. I just did that, and I don't even remember what it was about, but I remember I saw it on a plant-based group. And so we got together and one conversation led to another, and that's how it handed, because I'm out there putting myself out as an expert anyway.
Absolutely.
So while I'm doing that, I'm kind of scanning to see if there's any possibility there. And because that way I know that these shows are in my bailiwick.
And I really like that you stay in your lane with all this. And the thing I want to remind people of is you never know who's going to see you. I was talking with a client the other day that got a speaking engagement, a virtual speaking engagement, full fee, because somebody saw her on a podcast show. And so when you do these podcast shows, just give a lot of value, share your information, and just know that there are people out there who are watching you, and you never know what opportunities are going to present themselves. I actually am going to be having somebody on my show, the Plant-Based Show, who was on Good Morning America the other day. And I saw him on there, and he actually had diabetes. He was going blind. He was going to lose his toes and his fingers, really intense story. And while I'm watching the segment on GMA, I reached out to him. His publicist got in touch with me, and now we're negotiating on the date. And there's no money exchange or anything like that. He just wrote a book all about plant-based eating. He wants to get the message out. He's an African American, and he realizes that that's a community of people that are very impacted by COVID. And so he wants to do whatever he can to get the message out, which actually leads to the next point. Have you had hosts that have reached out to you, and how quickly do you respond when they do? How have they found you? Is it because of other podcast shows, things of that nature?
Yeah, a couple were, when you have that profile on Podit, I was approached by a few people that way. Of course, Rob contacted me. And then another one that I'm doing this Saturday, she reached out to me when I released information about my book on LinkedIn. And she was an acquaintance really in Toronto, Canada. And she has a show, and she said, Kate, I can't believe you did this, blah, blah, blah. And she runs a long-term care center, and she has a podcast for dementia, people dealing with dementia and their families. Oh. So that just came. And so she reached out to me. And then I sent a review copy of the book, and the host reached out to me, and then whoever got it sent it on to someone else, and a host reached out to me. Okay. So yeah, okay. Like you said, you just never know where
you never know. And the more you do, the more opportunity you create. Yeah. And I want to remind people that this is Kathleen Gage with both Power Up for Profits podcast show, Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. And right now I'm interviewing Kate Kunkel, who is, she's been just rocking it with podcast interviews. And how do people get in touch with you, Kate, so that if they do want to interview you, because this will go outside of the podcast Rockstar Club group, we're going to put it all over the place. And so somebody might say, you know what, I want her on my show, whether it be to talk about podcast interviews or to talk about dementia. How do they get in touch with you?
Just my website. It's the easiest way because I'm there all over the place. KateKunkel.com, Kunkel. So KateKunkel.com. There's a media page, there's contact information. You can read my blog. I have a lot of information on the blog about ways to prevent dementia. And of course the book is referenced there, but that's the best place to reach me.
Wonderful. And what would you say for somebody just starting out in the podcast Rockstar Club? They haven't even really cracked open the modules to study, but if they really want to get a jump start, what are the three top strategies that you can give them to really get out there and get podcast interviews?
Go through the modules. It doesn't help to buy the program and just let it sit there. You know, you got to follow it. And you, Kathleen, have done a really good job at putting things sequentially. You know, it makes real good sense the way you've done it. And it's so important. Also, to not be afraid. I'd have to say, you know, I can remember my first television program. I was shaking so much. It's a good thing I could hide my hands behind the desk because I was so scared. But fear can be overcome, and it's a good thing. It makes you on top of your game. It produces all kinds of stuff that you can use and energize yourself because you want to carry that energy in. So don't let fear get the best of you. And then the other thing is just to take the time to listen. Somebody asked in some group I was in the other day what to do to be to approach somebody for a podcast, and I said, you got to watch what they do. You got to listen to them, because don't just go willy-nilly, applying. Firstly, you're wasting their time and you're wasting your time. Really take the time, even if you don't listen to the whole episode, listen to a bunch of episodes, even if it's just little bits, so
Awesome.
that you're able to understand what they're really about.
Awesome. Okay, so walk us through the process of, let's say today is your day to do some research and outreach, and let's say you've found 2 or 3 shows that you can reach out to the host. Walk us through the process of what you do.
Yeah, so I try to find a direct email address. That isn't always possible. So if not, then I'll go through Facebook Messenger or something like that and reach out to the host or the team, whoever's working with the host. So then I'll send my initial thing, but I always ask permission to send my media sheet. The reason I do that is because as a host myself before, I didn't like people just sending me attachments. I liked to get the okay. I wanted to give them the okay, because one, I don't want to be just downloading stuff I don't know what it is. So that's why I always ask permission to say, I love your show, make some comment about it, but that means you have to listen to it, right? So you have to make some comment in your approach, and then just follow it up. So after you've done that, chances are you're not going to get an answer in the next day or 2, or maybe not even a week. And if you don't get an answer in a week, then send a follow-up. I'm just about to do that today. After we get off here, I've got 3 or 4 people that I want to follow up on because I haven't heard from them. So do have a good follow-up system, whatever that system is for you. I happen to use paper. I'm better with a list. I check them off. That's me. So that's my process to follow up. And then, and after the podcast, always to send a thank you.
Okay.
Even before you get the link, and say, I'm really looking forward to sharing this. And, I'll be sure to put this on my website and on my social media. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity.
You just hit the nail on the head with letting the host know that you're going to do some promotions, because when I have people on my show, I say, now you're not obligated at all to promote this, but if you'd like to, and every single one, they say, oh, we'll be happy to promote it. But if you're proactive and you say, look, this is one of the things I love to do, would that be okay if I share the permalink and I, send them to your podcast show? Is that okay? And they're going to say yes, but that lets them know that you're really serious about getting the message out, because you can tell as a host, it's like, I know when somebody is just trying to get on the show because it's all about them. And I know when they're trying to get on the show because they really have a bigger message about the planet, the animals, eating healthy, especially with the plant-based show. I mean, there's such a distinction between my Power Up show and my plant-based eating show. And I have to say that my greatest passion is the plant-based show. And I just did something that I'm going to encourage people to do. On my LinkedIn profile, I didn't put anything about being plant-based on my LinkedIn, the little, where it shows up in your banner, whatever that is. Boy, that's technical. But what I did is I changed it to marketing and visibility strategist, plant-based eater, vegan, committed to the animal, something to that effect. And immediately I couldn't believe it. Within 10 minutes, I started having some messages come to me of people that were like, oh, I see that you're plant-based. And so those things really do make a difference. So I want to see if there's any other questions. I don't see any other questions. So the people that are on the line right now, if you have questions, please post them in the comments, because that's why I'm turning and looking to my right. I have another computer here. But Kate, what else would you recommend to people?
Just take the time, be consistent too. It doesn't have to be a long time, but it's like any other thing that you do, right? Whether it's exercise or eating well, be consistent, because then you get into a pattern, and you know that every day I'm going to spend 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you have, or every other day, put it in your calendar and schedule that, because consistency, not only for you, but also you build kind of a momentum. Say you reach out to John Smith today, and he's not really interested, but he has a friend who does podcasts. So don't hesitate to say, maybe we could talk about this, or we could talk about something else with your friend, especially if you have some kind of a relationship with that person in another way, and that's their social media. Social media can be a total time sucker, or it can be a very valuable business tool. So I admit I watch cat videos all the time.
Okay.
Now, I just saw something about meerkats, so now I'm into meerkats. But the point is that time, that consistency, that time following up on people. So if John says, no, I'm not really, that's not our thing, but at least if you did answer, then you can also say, perhaps you know someone who would be. And that consistency to follow up.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I just dropped an episode. It went live yesterday with Roshino, who is from India. She's the top fitness and plant-based nutritionist in all of India. And I didn't know who she was, other than I reached out to somebody else who was plant-based. I said, I'd love to talk to you about being on my podcast show. And this person said, well, I don't really do podcasts, but I have somebody I'd like to introduce you to. It was boom, boom, boom. Within a week, we did the interview. It went live. And so ask for those referrals. If they are not the right fit, say, who else do you know that might be a great fit? I have hosts who will ask me, who else do you know that could be on my show? And I ask my guests that too. So what else would you say before we wrap this up? And I don't see any other questions. Again, I would encourage people, if you have questions, please post it in the comments in the Facebook group. Anything else that you'd like to give?
Yeah, so I attended a class not too long ago about creating group programs. And as I was taking it, I thought, wow, this really fits for podcasts too, because I have a pretty big, it's a niche message, but it's pretty big. A lot of things are involved in that thing. So there's music and mindfulness and meditation and plant-based eating. And so that's all there, but there might be some thing that's in your niche. So like with you, when I was on your show, I only took really the plant-based eating part of all of the other stuff I do. So if you can stay within your message, but take a little piece that might fit into a host's bailiwick, then take that little piece and approach them. And that's, again, the importance of really knowing who you're approaching.
I love that recommendation, because I work with a number of different clients who have different niches, and a great example is Peg, who wrote the book, Margaret Mary. She wrote the book Scandal in the Shadows, and it's about women in the priesthood. So that's one piece. Well, that's a real narrow niche. And so we transferred some of her information over to being an author. What did it take to write a book like that? What about the research? And so she has a couple of angles that she can come from, just like you do, the dementia, the exercise, the plant-based eating, the, memory care, whatever it may be. So I encourage people. Debbie says, thank you, ladies. Great advice. And thank you for those who listened in. This will go live all over the internet as much as possible. And I just want to say to people, go out and take a risk, because if you don't jump on these opportunities, you're going to miss the opportunity of educating your market. If you have an important message, do everything you can to get that message out to market. And I just want to say thank you so much, Kate, for jumping on this opportunity. When I put it out to the group and I said, you have to have gotten at least 3 interviews since being in the podcast Rockstar Club, and you immediately said yes. And this is how success happens. You don't sit back and analyze everything and say, should I or shouldn't I? It's like, no, you jump in, you roll up your sleeves, and you just do it. So with that, what are your closing thoughts, Kate?
Yeah, jump in, have fun. That's a big part about this, right? It's not all seriousness, it's fun. And you get that across to your listeners, your viewers, that makes them connect with you even more. So just enjoy the process too.
Excellent. And I want to say thank you so much for your time. You've given a wealth of information. We're getting some great comments here. Margot says, great interview. Debbie says, thank you, ladies. Great advice. And I just want to thank all of you in the podcast Rockstar Club. And I encourage you, go out and get those interviews, because once you get 3 interviews and they've gone live, you've done the interview and they've gone live, you could be on this Facebook Live. Imagine what that can do for your visibility and your message. This is Kathleen Gage, wishing you a great day.